Madayaw na allaw sa inyong tanan din sa Caraga, Davao Oriental. Dako kayo akong pasalamat nga I'm able to be part of your Panagsandug festival, and I'm so thankful and to Ma'am Josefa, your IPMR, para sa karon nga engagement. So I'll try to share my topic in a way na makarelate ta tanan, no? And I know that your Indigenous Peoples cultural identifier is Dagmay. I'm also from the Bayan Indigenous Peoples group. Naapod mi cultural identifier, ang tawag namo is Blaan Tabi. So amo ang cultural identifier is called the Blaan Tabi, and I'm holding one which was done by Baiya Bing Masalundulo, who was gawad sa Manilika ng Bayan and passed away recently. So for this important event, I wanted to share this photo that I found sa Facebook page ni Mama Josefa. And you can see the distinctive human na design in your indigenous peoples na cultural identifier na Dagmay. I don't really understand kung unsa ni siyang text nga naa dinhi, but what I thought is like a prayer and an aspiration, and also the goal of connecting to your roots, to your culture. So I wanted to say my acknowledgement to Honorable Mayor Ronnie Osnan, Honorable Vice Mayor Melody Benetiz, Honorable Members ng Sangguniang Bayan, Council of Elders and Tribal Chieftains, teachers, and all of the Mandaya Indigenous Peoples Group ng Caraga, Davao Oriental. Madayaw na allaw sa inyong tanan, and I join your happiness for your Panagsandug, which means unity, solidarity, and oneness festival today. So ang ako ang siya nga speech, no, kay wa man ko din ha in person. I'll just have to try to do something na in a presentation form ang ako ang speech with this topic, how are festivals beneficial sa atong mga community, unsa man ang karang IPW like Dagmay, unsang representation niya ani sa atong community, unsa ang cultural appropriation in a high level context, and how does it affect our community, unsa nga to mahimo on this cultural appropriation na topic, kinsa atong mga stakeholders nga pwedeng nato matap, o papaano makatabang nga atong community members, atong elected officials, para masuportahan ang mga existing na communities still doing Dagmay weaving. So with respect to festivals, of course, it's part of our culture. It's part of what we do as a community. And this is a vital role sa pagpreserba, pagsa-celebrate nato, passing down to the next generations sa ato ang mga cultural traditions. So dagan kay mga rason. Your reason can be different, but these are some of the karang high level na mga reasons. Preservation of our culture, oral tradition o ato ang mga traditional practices, enhancing our community bonding, mga fostering unity and exchange nato sa atong knowledge. So ginatawag nato mga bonding nato sa atong community members, cultural education, ang atong cultural awareness of cultural sensitivities, para makapag-promote og deeper and appreciation and understanding sa ato ang mga indigenous cultures. Connection with nature, dili nato ni siya ma-separate yun ang ato ang sarili from nature. Ceremonial, ang ilahang cultural significance sa ato ang mga ceremonial practices, cultural revitalization, especially sa atong language, sa atong art, sa atong craft, and revival, especially sa inyong Dagmay, economic and tourism benefits. So sa isa ka community, gaano ba ka halaga ang Dagmay? Unsang ginarepresentar niya ani? So this is one of the photos of the weavers posted by Mama Josefa in her Facebook page on the Mandaya Culture and Arts. This is really a very good indicator nga naapay cultural masters existing in the community that are trying to transfer the skills nga naa sa ilaha to preserve our cultural heritage. O gari siya, dako kung kaya siya kahimuan, connectivity niya to our mother nature. Kaya nga naman, Dagmay is a natural resource. It is a plant that you have to source out. The dyes are so natural. Everything na ginagamit din, hindi siya synthetic. It's all part of nature. The connectivity of spiritual and the beliefs, the sacred symbolism that is part of the design, ritual use, na ginagamit pa ninyo din. Ang social and economic significance niya, ang cultural resilience o cultural revival that your community is trying to do given the remaining few numbers of cultural masters. O kung sa po ang role sa younger generations. So speaking of the role of the younger generation, so these are different generations of Mandaya culture. Of course, our model din si Ma'am Josefa Ugayahang anak nga si Neresa based in California right now. Look at how beautiful that representation of culture is. And there's much younger generations who are so proud and fascinated of your Dagmay. And if ever there are other community members that owns Dagmay, how beautiful it is to celebrate this cultural identifier. Here's some more photos of the beautiful women from your community. And this one is something educational. That's why the need for preservation sa inyong Dagmay is connected to cultural education, especially for the younger generation. For your younger generation to be proud of your cultural identity and the beauty of your culture as shown kung unsa man ang inyong kasuotan. So, a shift na karon sa cultural appropriation, no? So, cultural appropriation, dako kayo ni siya nga topic. You maybe have seen it around your communities. Maybe you are not aware ng cultural appropriation na ito. Pero mga festivals, daghan kayong issue sa cultural appropriation kasi ang ilahang tema mostly lang pagpasundayag pero wala sila kabalo kung unsa ang effect sa pag dili tarong na pagpasundayag o pagpaila sa tribo. So appropriation means to take something that belongs to someone else for one's use. In the case of the heritage, appropriation happens when the cultural element, unsa sa elemento sa atong kultura, is taken from its cultural context and used in another. So daghan og mga types sa cultural appropriation actually, and we are just trying to talk about cultural appropriation in the context of cultural exploitation. That means ang subordinate culture like indigenous peoples mostly is being used para mas makabenepisyo ang dominant culture sa society. So daghan og mga cause and effect no nga analysis nga pwede nato mahitabo din nga why there are cultural appropriations, especially cultural exploitation specifically. Na isa, failure to comply intellectual property rights, especially kariganing free and prior informed consent. Nagpasundayag na lang sila, walay engagement sa IP communities, walay pag-ask og permiso, wala, they just did it on their own. Commercialization and commodification sa ato ang mga cultural identifiers, cultural artifacts, that's also one thing. Lack of appreciation and respect of the indigenous people's integrity and identity. They just wanted to clap for us. They just wanted to use our names, but they never really cared about our culture, the preservation of our culture. They just wanted to showcase us for their own interest. Bastardization and misrepresentation of IP culture, especially sa festivals. Magtuwad-tuwad with all of the very provocative movements that are not appropriate anymore and that is out of context sa representation sa indigenous people. So misrepresentation in fashion shows, misrepresentation in pageants, inappropriate representations in festivals. And this has gained a lot of issues, especially karang mga controversial ng mga festivals that the participants, kay basta lang ang aim nila nga makapagdaog, but they could not care less about the very culture that they're trying to project. So cultural appropriation, especially cultural exploitation, nag-focus siya sa commodification and incorporation sa elements ng subordinated culture para lang sa ilahang maserve ang ilahang dominant nga interest. Ang pinakanindot nga explanation kay Dato Waway, and he said that it is cultural mining. Exactly. So daghan kayo mga details that can be learned from this. Pero ang challenge din karibang mga cultural outsiders, will they care kung para mag-promote ang ato nga IP culture without monetary benefits or exchange to them? You know, will they elevate ato ang mga IP groups and IP communities, dili lang gamiton as a marketing strategy? So kita po ng mga IP communities, will we care to preserve our culture even without monetary exchange? Will we care to do skills transfer even though there's no pay, just because the love of teaching to the younger generations? That's a challenge that we have to face. So daghan kaayog mga provisions sa IPRA nga we can really make use of about cultural integrity. Di na ako na isa-isahon. I'm sure master na kayo ng mga IP leaders nato, especially ani, but implementing it and how we are practicing it is a different thing. So if we really practice our law, that is very much good. Ang isa ka na gina-admire, one of the minds and authors sa Philippines, very famous also for her works, is si Ma'am Marian Pastoroses. In one of the articles in Rappler in 2020, and Losing Our Minds, the Amputation of Traditional Art, nagsulti siya nga, ang the most obvious outcomes karing ingani nga topic are the horrific craftification of tradition in the hands of zealous but clueless designers. Development projects that further erode what is left of recollection, livelihood enterprises that offer food for tomorrow but snuff out of the creativity needed for the dignified long-term survival, and local exhibitions glorifying awful versions of the forgotten genius. Lalom kaay ng iyaha nga panghinumdum ani, but this is something that we can think of as indigenous peoples, how it is applying to our own culture. So we can learn and reflect, are we even part of that degradation of our culture? Are we even part of the cultural exploitation in that sense? So we have to also check ourselves. Na mga policy recommendations, this one is part of our engagement with the Tuklas Katutubo with Senate inquiry in 2020. So one of the recommendations is pass legislation and regulation, especially community level, na mag-set of limitations concerning cultural appropriation using the bottom-up approach na dapat gikan gitya sa community kung unsang kagustuhan sa community. Empowering community-based leaders, mga cultural workers natin to take a stand para ang ilahang moral leadership on any form of cultural appropriation, especially will be heard and will be seen. So co-ownership sa ato ang cultural masters making works for non-indigenous peoples nga nag-commission lang sa ilaha para sa ilahang creative work. So there should be a written agreement na abo sila royalty para equally elevated. Dili lang sila feeling nila nagigamit lang sila or nagpalit lang sila. Then after that, they walay recognition to the cultural master. Of course, strengthening our free and prior informed consent beyond the land matters, that it can be done as well sa mga researches about your Dagmay, sa mga concerns about your culture and especially your cultural identifiers. So why the need to really stress all of this? It's because you have to think about these younger generations. Look at how beautiful these younger generations are, and look at the thriving part of your cultural identifier. So when you preserve your culture, surely enough, your generations will be loving it. They're gonna treasure it and be proud of it. So these are cousins. This is Shera, anak ni Gladys, Piamonte Piper based in Georgia. So Filipino-American siya, pero look at how proud and happy she is wearing your cultural identifier along with her cousins. And si Ma'am Josefa and members of the community, there's the distinctive part that when we teach our younger generations, we are helping ensuring that our culture is going to thrive and going to exist in that particular generation. And hopefully, this generation nila will also do the same thing, pagpapamana sa inyuhang Dagmay in wherever they go. So this is mostly the context of how important your Dagmay is. And I hope that you will be able to reflect in your panagsandog today nga gaano kahalaga ni sa inyo nga kultura. If there are very few na cultural masters pa right now, reach out to them, care for them, support them. Kasi sila ang lifeline para sa inyo nga Dagmay to still thrive in the future. And then if there's a policy that the government will be able to support your very few cultural masters left, please do that. Please do that. So that's only my message and inspiration na I wanted to share sa inyo ang tanan. Madayaw alaw, dagdagan salamat, bong salamat from Ablaan for me for making me part of this engagement sa inyo nga panagsandog for today. Again, Dagdagan salamat sa inyong tanan.